Trading Time with your host, John Rousseau.
Paul Rousseau, my favorite uncle, is our guest today on Trading Time. He is a master mechanical engineer working for one of the largest companies on earth, Caterpillar Machinery. He's a pump and motor specialist, top 10 in the world. He's traveled all over the world, solving problems, big, heavy, expensive problems for people. He's got an incredible insight into a lot of different systems that are in play in the human machine. And I really look forward to our discussion today and sharing that with you, as well as some of his solutions for moving forward in the human experience. Enjoy. So you were a resident of the Okanagan back when the Okanagan was the Wild West.
Yeah, pretty much, yes. Yeah. Grew up, was born in Oliver, 61. Spent some time in Vancouver while my dad was going to school to become a radiologist, and spent 3 years down in Tsawwassen, which I really enjoyed. Got a little flavor of the ocean and Vancouver life. Then we moved to Kelowna, spent the bulk of my youth living in Kelowna, graduated from school there, put 1 year of college in Kelowna as well. But I started to get a little bit antsy, wanted to do some different things, and one of the things that I got an opportunity to do some work out in the Kootenays, out in Elkford, and I went to work at a coal mine there for a couple of years. Got 2 years of an apprenticeship in millwrighting at that location in Fording Coal in Elkford. That was different. Really enjoyed living in the mountains there. You're right in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. That was really, really enjoyable. Got to do a lot of winter adventure there, as well as 4x4ing and good fishing and hunting and stuff. So anyway, so I got an opportunity to go with one of my friends, John Fennell, down in New Zealand for a year or half a year. So we decided to jump and go down there and spend a little bit of our wild early 20s youth down in New Zealand, which was a lot of fun. Came back and wanted to finish up my apprenticeship. So I went up north. I had a cousin that lived in Grand Prairie, Alberta. And there I got a job, spent a cold winter on a survey crew up on the highways department for Alberta.
And what were they building?
It was just road work, just doing surveying on road work, and spent lots of cold hours outside in the wintertime and realized that's really not what I wanted to do. So I got a job, what was really an interesting up and coming company called Risley Manufacturing in Grand Prairie. And they were just on the forefront of just in the early stages of building feller buncher heads, which was part of the logging industry,
Yes.
which I had absolutely no idea what was going on in the logging industry. I had nothing to do with it up until that point. And deep dive into that. Over the years, we developed multiple machines for the logging industry, mostly just the attachment heads. And then later we got into converting some prime movers such as Caterpillar, John Deere, Komatsu, these sort of machines. And
For the forestry sector with these heads on them.
Yeah.
So
we did the whole complete package.
explain for people listening and watching what a feller buncher head is.
Feller buncher head is it's quite unique. It approaches a tree. It grapples onto the base of the tree. And it has a saw that comes out and cuts it off. And then it manipulates, it has the ability to be able to pick up the tree after it's been harvested and stack it. Typically, they'll put it into bunches of, say, anywhere from 5 to 25 trees into a stack, and then a grapple skidder will come and grab that, bring it out to the roadside where it's processed to go onto the trucks. Right. So we built feller buncher heads, we built processing heads, we built roadside delimbers, and later in my career there, I spent 7 years in Grand Prairie doing that. And later, working for that company, I ended up as a foreman for basically, or the supervisor for one of the product lines, which was a limit delimber. And so I looked after everything to do with the limit. Would look after the production of the machine, would look after the installation and then delivery of the machines to the end customer. So I wore a lot of hats. It was enjoyable. Learned a lot about production. That's where I really started to understand production lines, putting things together, fit up what would work in the field and what wouldn't. And so it was good. And it was a small company, so everybody ended up wearing a bunch of hats.
Yes.
We had started to really do an extensive amount of business in the Southeast United States with our feller butcher heads. And these would go on rubber tire loader type machines, which they call rubber tire bunchers. And we sold a lot of these in the Southeast. So it got to the point where we needed a technical rep. So being single, I went down there and I went down and basically set up a home operation in Raleigh, North Carolina for Risley. And I looked after basically the Eastern United States and Canada, as well as South America for Risley as a product support, field engineering, product development, help with sales. So again, lots of different hats.
Yep.
And that's where I really, really learned a lot about being able to prototype machines, take prototype machines, bring them to the woods, work them for 6 months to a year, get all the bugs out of it, get them production ready. So I started, did a lot of field engineering and a lot of cold days in the woods, a lot of hot days in the Brazilian semi-jungle with these eucalyptus plantations in Brazil. We sold a lot of our what we called stroke processors down there in Brazil.
Stroke processor, is that the one that will cut lengths?
Yeah, it's an extension of a feller buncher. It was actually amazing in Brazil. They have these massive plantations. And they swap the land with sugarcane. So they'll do sugarcane on the land for like 5 years, and then they'll convert that land to eucalyptus plantations. And these plantations will produce a tree within 7 years.
Wow.
They just grow unbelievably there.
7 years.
7 years to grow a tree. They're ready to harvest in 7 years, which when you think about here in Canada,
oh my
most
goodness,
of the United States,
no.
it's unbelievable. But you can get like an 18 to 20 inch tree in 7 years.
And is that a function of irrigation? Are they heavily irrigating these? Like what's the quality of the wood fiber?
It's terrible. It's typically used for pulp.
For pulp.
Yeah.
Right.
So
okay.
it's not a quality wood. It's a volume.
They just want the
type wood.
fiber.
But what's really amazing with that is, getting back to the stroke processors, this is a machine that would go up and collect one or two of these machines, or two of these machines, flip it over, and then it had a mast on it that would delimb 8 to 10 feet. Grab the tree, pull it back through, and the saw would cut it. And it would do that multiple times on a tree. So it would take all the limbs off, and basically you're left with a pile of 8-foot wood that is then taken out to roadside and transported to the mill. So it's something that and the eucalyptus, the limbs were really bizarre. They were hard to delimb. So we ended up having to do a lot of modifications down there. So I spent a lot of time in Brazil modifying the machines to get them to work for that environment. Once we got that working, it was pretty good. Like we sold a lot of machines, and it was a lot of fun working in those plantations, spending some time in Brazil. It was nice. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, it was good part of my career.
So if we can just go back to the Grand Prairie,
yeah.
I just had something I wanted to touch on. I mean, most people, when they go to Home Depot or Rona and they look at a 2x4, they don't really think much past that.
No, they don't know how it got there. Most people don't. They know it has to go through a sawmill, right? But they really don't fully understand the whole process of stump to store. And I've been through the whole process. I understand that. It's changed a lot over the years. I haven't really been in that industry in the last, say, 15 years, but I fully understood it when I was there because we went, from stump, worked with people bringing it into the mill. I understood how the mills worked. I understood how the pulp mills worked, the sawmills worked, and then distribution to your Home Depots of the world. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, every piece of wood is touched multiple times before it ever gets to Home Depot, and there's a lot of work that goes into it, and and a lot of people touch that. It's a really really good career base for a lot of people.
Yes.
Logging. There's no question about that.
Well, and then we've got the loggers. We've got them out in the woods at all times of year. This time of year,
Sure.
they're logging. In the fall, we've heard lots of logging going on across the valley from us here, and you just take a look at all of the really expensive pieces of machinery that go into that.
Very much. And these machineries, they have to be built robust. There is no question about that. I mean, that's where I learned how to make structure and hydraulic systems as robust as possible.
Was in logging.
Was in logging, because if you try to make it light, it just falls apart. You just can't. It's really the ultimate robust engineering that you have to do for logging equipment. Everything has to be beefy and tough, and you have to be able to withstand -40. I mean, there's
Yes.
been places where I've been in northern Alberta, up in the Northwest Territories, where it's routinely -35 to -40. Things mechanically don't work so well at that temperature, so you gotta design for that, and especially on the hydraulic side, very very difficult to get hydraulics to work properly at those kind of temperatures, and
Because
so,
when we think about times of the year when we want to harvest wood, it's when the tree is in its dormant cycle, so it doesn't have a whole bunch of sap and pitch moving through the assembly of the tree.
Yep.
The best time to harvest it is when the tree is shutting down for winter or in its winter phase.
It really doesn't matter. One of the things that you have to really watch out for winter logging is being too rough with the wood, because you got to remember the wood is going to be the same temperature as the ambient, so it cracks really easy. So one of the things that we struggled with was making sure that our saw heads didn't shatter the stump of the tree when they went to cut it off. And that's a lot of people go like, well, what do you mean? Well, the tree's frozen. So you got to make sure, and it splits very, very easily. So we had to do a lot of development on the shape of our teeth, our cutter teeth on our saw heads, to make sure that we didn't shatter the wood. And a lot of the times you'd have to slow the cutting feed rate down in order to prevent that in the winter as well. So lots of stuff to consider.
Lots of variables.
Yeah, and you got to be gentle when you go to drop it on the ground to stack it, to bunch it, that you don't break the timber up, because the timber is valuable. You cut a 22 inch spruce tree, you don't want it split. I mean, that takes a lot of value out of the tree. Yeah. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Amazing dynamics and variabilities.
Yeah, and one of the funny things is that if in a big chunk, sorry. In a big chunk of the logging in Canada is done in the winter, because a lot of these places you just can't get into in the summer. They're muskeg.
Yes.
Right. So you end up just sinking, and skidders get stuck and stuff like that. So a lot of work is done in the wintertime. Yep. It's a great industry.
Yeah.
We are so blessed in this country to have that as a renewable resource. I know that there's a lot of resistance to logging, but everybody uses wood products,
Yes.
right? And we are just so blessed to have a country that we have such an amazing renewable resource. It's just it's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we are, aren't we?
Yeah, very much so.
Now you think about a lot of countries in the world don't have giant forests like this.
No, and they rely on importing of wood.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you look at like a place like Japan. I mean, a lot of their construction wood comes from the United States or Canada.
Yes.
Right. Although they do have some logging in Japan, it's very, very limited. And
But when you think about population density and how much wood fiber a country like that would go through, wood fiber in the form of pulp and or 2x4, 2x6 material
Yep.
versus, what they're able to produce.
Yeah.
They need to have partners in Canada and the US.
What needs to happen in the logging industry in Canada is that over the years we've gotten smarter. Like exporting logs for the other countries to cut up. That was a really bad practice. We've got to be able to process the product that those countries want. So if that means metric dimensions, then we have to do that. But we should be sending them a finished product, not raw logs. So, and I know there's been a big push for that lately, is to try to get as much of the industry as a finished product rather than raw material.
Yeah.
Get the Canadian value into that product before it leaves the country.
Add the value in Canada.
Add the value in Canada.
Add the value in Canada.
But also give the customer what they want.
Yeah.
Right. They don't want 2x4s. They want some sort of metric dimensions. So give them the metric dimensions.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we have to be able to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm always shocked when I hear that we are sending our most valuable resources out to other countries unrefined.
Yeah.
Whether it be in, like, they're talking about shipping bitumen out to Asia, they're talking about the wood fiber that we send over there. We should be adding the value here.
Absolutely.
And
as much as possible.
Well, then we'd have to build a refinery and we'd have to build all this extra capacity. Yeah.
Yep.
And we'd have to hire all those extra people
Yes.
to run that, and we'd have to take responsibility for all of that and reap the benefits that come with adding that value.
I don't know much about the mining industry. I did spend a year and a half, 2 years in Elford in the coal mine. But I think it needs to be the same thing there as well. Any of the mining resources of this country, which is vast as well, we have to be able to get as much value added in Canada as we can. So does that mean rather than shipping raw coal, do we send more refined coal ready for the furnace that's required for the steel mills in Asia and stuff like that? So, and I know we do a lot of that, but we need to make sure that we're maximizing that, get as much value for our resources. We are just so lucky to have so much natural resources in this country. Yeah. And when you think about it, not a whole lot of people have to share it. No. Right. The population of Canada is very low. We got the population of California in Canada. Yeah. And I think that we need to be able to understand that is really our value, is natural resources. And we have to be able to absolutely get the best money we can for it. No doubt about it.
So some of the Scandinavian countries have sovereign wealth funds, where they've realized everything that you've just said, like from a petroleum perspective or from whatever. I think they just found a huge phosphate mine in Denmark or Finland.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, their country benefits from a natural resource perspective, in the sense that private companies pay royalties, or whoever's extracting these resources would pay royalties to the crown or the country.
Yes.
And as a result of that, the GDP of the country is incredible. The social services that they're able to enjoy are immense.
Yes.
And the standard of living is way higher. People make more money. And I wonder if we are managing our resources properly from that perspective.
No. I mean, I think if you look at maximizing the value added to the product, mm-hmm. then a lot more people are going to be affected by its wealth, okay, yeah. or by its profit. Shipping raw logs, who really makes the money there? Yeah. It's basically the forest industry selling raw logs. Whereas if you process through a mill and distribution and shipping channels and everything like that, then you've got a lot more Canadians getting their share out of that natural resource.
Yes.
Sharing the wealth of natural resources should be a right of all Canadians, as far as I'm concerned. Right? Yeah. That should be something that we should be sharing amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
It's our wood, it's our minerals, it's our fishing. We should everybody should have access to that if they're willing to work, but they got to be willing to work.
Right.
So I moved down to North Carolina. I spent 7 years working for Risley down there as a field rep. And I think it was these multiple trips to Brazil. My son came along and my wife said, okay, enough of this traveling. So I decided to go into the service industry for hydraulics. And I worked in the service industry for 3 years. And that's where I really, really learned a lot about hydraulics, especially components, especially pumps and motors. And then I got an opportunity to go to contract work for Caterpillar in North Carolina. One of the divisions of Caterpillar, called BCP, is based in Cary, North Carolina, which is a sub area of Raleigh. And I was able to get in there as a contract worker for 2 years, and then eventually got hired as a direct employee for Caterpillar. And I basically have worked at BCP as a pump and motor specialist. Basically, anything to do with hydraulic pumps and motors, I get involved with. And I work with suppliers, the Rexroth, Danfoss, some of these other big European suppliers, to be able to work with that supplier to develop components that will work on our machines, which is, we rarely buy anything catalog out of a catalog.
Yes.
Most of the time there's going to be some heavy changes that are going to need to happen with the component to get it to fit our application. And so I work with the suppliers to do that, from conception all the way through to production. So it's a hand holding of the whole process of development, design, development, validation, and then get it ready for series production. And so I look after that whole process for multiple machines at BCP. BCP, Building Construction Products, is a division of Caterpillar that's most focused on some of the smaller machines that would be used in the construction industry mostly. So it's going to be things like skid steers and small wheel loaders, small dozers, small hydraulic excavators, to name a few. And we look into that. We have plants in Europe. Our division, BCP, has plants in Europe. We have a plant in Brazil. We have a plant in Japan. We have a plant in 2 plants in China. So we're well established around the world. We have multiple plants in North America, and we build all of the machines that get sold into our division internally at these various plants. We try to get plants located where the market is. So if a machine is mostly marketed in North America, such as skid steers, we have our plants there. And one of those plants was in Sanford, North Carolina, which was just south of Raleigh. So I spent a lot of time there. We also have a small wheel loader plant in Clayton. So that's just outside of Raleigh as well. And so I work with these 2 plants. A lot of the work I did was with these 2 plants, developing new components. And that's kind of been my career down there for now. So I consider myself a pump and motor expert. I'm probably one of the top 10 in the world when it comes to understanding of pumps and motor technology, what can be done with it, how to develop it, how to make it work better. It's very, very clear that working with these engineers from these different companies is it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good projects. Yep.
So give our audience a sense of the scale of Caterpillar. Like, I'm sure everybody has seen a piece of CAT equipment in their life, if not multiples, working on highway projects or logging projects, like you say. But what is the breadth of their company?
Well, the main thing, move dirt. That's what Caterpillar does, move dirt. I mean, that's essentially what they do.
Yes.
Caterpillar is a multi-billion-dollar company, and it's the largest dirt working or construction equipment company in the world.
Wow.
It
bigger than Hitachi, bigger than
it's
Komatsu.
It's bigger than John Deere. It's big. It's the biggest earth moving construction equipment company in the world. There's a lot of competition coming from China. We'll talk about that later. But it's big. It's broken up into many different divisions. Okay, mining. Basically that's one of the biggest divisions. That's where a lot of the big money comes in. Mining, large mining equipment. These are the big haul trucks, the big wheel loaders, the big the massive sized dozers. I mean, there's dozers that we build, these Steel 11 dozers that nobody else in the world builds. So we're the only supplier of this size type machinery, large bulldozers. And so it's big. The division I work for, BCP, is all the small machinery, but it's huge volume. Our Sanford plant in North Carolina that builds CTLs. These are the
acronym.
Yeah, CTLs is a track type loader.
Yes.
And these are small vehicles. We build 140 a day.
140 a day?
140 a day in that plant. And we also have production of some of the smaller machines in India as well as Brazil. So all plants combined, we're over 170 a day. Wow. Between the three plants. Unreal. So it's big volume. It's not automotive volume, but it's getting close. Yeah. And so needless to say, those plants are extremely busy. One of the projects I'm working on now is a next generation CTL drive motor. I can't go into too much detail because it's still under development, but it's a next generation CTL drive motor that is unique. I'll put it that way. I can't go into much more detail than that. Yeah. And it's due to go to production at the end of this year.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what's the turnaround time on a project like that from inception to?
Oh, this one, because it's so radical. This one took over 12 years working.
Unbelievable.
12 years from napkin design to when we actually go to series production.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It's going to be a game changer. And it's something that was never ever developed. This is the first time this type of product is going to hit the market. So it went from conception 12 years ago to basically series production at the end of this year.
God, the amount of money in research and development on a product like that.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely into the millions on this one.
Yeah,
there's no question about it.
Well, yeah,
and but it's all part and parcel of the whole thing is, being able to, you have to spend a lot of time developing quality product. You can't just scab it together and hope for the best. And one of the things, we're dealing with China now. China is quite an interesting place. I did my first trip to China this summer, and that was quite unique. No doubt about it.
So let's, before we go to China, I wanna understand the number of factories that you visited in Europe over the years, and I wanna kind of get a sense of Europe's manufacturing capabilities in order to supply you with these products, and then talk about how and why China, as a result of these new product developments. So what's Europe like? What does Europe do for you? What's your relationship like with Europe and their engineers?
A lot of the top hydraulic components come from Europe, designed and built there. We do a lot of business with European suppliers. We work with factories in the UK, Italy, Germany, Spain, and we go Czech Republic, to name a few. But those are sort of the bigger centers, especially Germany and Italy.
Yes.
And I usually travel there 2 to 3 times a year, spend a week or two each trip, and to just follow up on our projects with these companies. 2 of the bigger names, three of the bigger names are Danfoss, Bosch Rexroth, and Von Figlioli. And those are all entities that people know. And these are big companies, and working with their plants, they do most of all of their engineering in-house.
Yes.
They do all of their development of their components in-house. And some of them have, some of the bigger, like Rexroth does some of their development in multiple locations around the world, depending on each one of these facilities may have a specialty as part of the component. So they work as collaboration from some of their different design centers around the world. But typically, the what they call the host plant or the mother plant that is going to be the key developer and manufacturing point of that component. They'll usually bring everything together and then do all of their validation. Typically, a process like that from conception of a component takes anywhere from 4 to 8 years to develop, depending on how complex it's going to be.
So this is a pump that's attached to a hydraulic system.
Yep.
Motor behind it, driving. And this is controlling like the boom arm of an excavator.
Yeah, yep, fair enough.
And so that whole component sequence that we're talking about, you're saying 8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years. Yeah, eight to 10 years from especially if it's not something that exists, we have to say, okay, we're going to maybe take this base component, but we're going to do a bunch of things to it to make it better and get it to work for us. Typically, a program like that is going to take about 8 years from conception to series production.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work that goes into that, a tremendous amount of work. And we get involved in all of the steps because basically it's my job to babysit that project all the way through from conception all the way through to series production.
Yeah.
And some of them can be quite involved.
So these components that go into making this mechanism, which helps us dig holes in the ground.
Yes.
Right.
Move dirt, basically.
To move dirt.
Yeah.
We have to marshal the best factories from all over the world to generate specialty little machine components, depending on what it is these factories specialize in.
Yep.
They all come together in this one facility to create this one component in a machine that has 100 different components like this on the inside of it.
Yep. So the amount of work, especially if you're doing a completely next generation excavator, like we did on a recent, say 4 to 10 ton vehicles, excavators, right? Mm-hmm. We completely radical new hydraulic system. So I was in charge of developing the pump. Another component engineer was designed. He looked after developing the valve bank that runs everything, that distributes all the oil and everything like that. Completely different layout of the machine. We had to develop new swing motors. We had to develop new travel motors. So there was a lot of new stuff that went into this next generation machine, and it was radically different than anybody else does today. It's a very successful program. And it was fun to be part of that because it was so radical. Nobody had ever done this, and it was actually I had a lot of input into the conception of the circuit of the development. Basically, running an electronically displacement controlled pump rather than what they call traditional load sense control, flow controls on pumps. So I'm not going to get into the huge details.
Yeah.
But essentially going with which seems to be really the trend now is electrifying machines, just like they have in cars, where electronics are becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger factor on how you manage everything within cars. And a Tesla, well, it's all electric. So when you think about the complexity of the electronic systems in there, it's getting that way also on a lot of this construction equipment, electrification of even replacing diesel engines with electric motors.
I've seen some of these coming out, some of these conceptual machines.
This is a big deal. This is really, truly a big deal that's coming up with that.
To be able to put the technology that you would use in a mine scenario, because a lot of the mining equipment that you guys build is electric.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So to be able to take that same idea and scale it down into some of these smaller machines that you guys develop.
And it's extremely challenging because if you're going to replace a diesel engine with an electric motor, right, you got to find place for battery.
Yeah,
okay,
a lot of it,
because it's unrealistic that you can plug in a machine and drive around with an extension cord behind you.
Yeah.
So now, but there are instances where you can do that.
Right.
But most of it And the problem is right now is that these machines that I typically work with have very, very, very small area that you can put batteries in. Okay. And the issue that we're seeing right now, and it's part and parcel with everybody in the industry trying to do this, is that your runtime is, you can only realistically get about 4, maybe 5 hours of runtime before you have to recharge the machine. Okay. Now, for some of this equipment, that's fine, because maybe they only run it 4 hours a day. It's fine. Everything's okay. But for somebody that really wants it as a production machine and wants to run it anywhere from like 8 to 12 hours a day,
Yes.
that means multiple recharges during the day, which is unrealistic.
And downtime.
Yeah.
So you're charging it at lunchtime. You're taking an extended lunch break
Yes.
because you have to allow for this to recharge.
And at that point, people are going like, just buy a diesel version, right?
Well, okay, but so let's just go into that, because this ties into something else that I want to talk to you about. Because in previous conversations that you and I have had, we've looked at the net zero battery generation challenges that people
absolutely.
are up against, right?
Yep,
And
yep.
being that you're involved in the largest dirt moving apparatus on the planet,
Yeah.
the challenges with being able to build as many batteries as what are being called for in the marketplace, is that even realistic?
Well, I mean, at this point, because it is so limited, there's enough lithium to produce batteries. Lithium long term is not the solution, and it's because of its size versus power that you can store in it. Okay, and it's going to be extremely limiting to run dirt moving equipment. It takes a lot of energy to move dirt. There's no question about it. It takes a lot more energy to move dirt than it is to travel down the road in a Tesla. So what's got to happen is that there needs to be a battery breakthrough technology in order for us to make most small dirt machines and all of our vehicles that we enjoy driving. We have to have a battery technology breakthrough. Lithium is limited, and it's really not the best solution because of its limited range, especially on dirt work. So what I see needs to happen is, before electrification of a lot of road vehicles, including highway trucks, is that we are going to have a battery technology differentiating away from lithium, or we have to make lithium a lot more efficient than it is right now. We have to figure out ways of making it better.
So when people hear, well, we're going to mandate that every new vehicle sold by 2030 or 2035 be electric in certain jurisdictions.
At this point, I can't see that being realistic. I really don't. Unless, of course, somebody's sitting on a battery technology breakthrough, right? That is abundant in its resource to be able to produce, and doesn't create like horrible mining conditions like lithium does. Lithium is not the prettiest to the world when it comes to producing it out of the ground. It's we need to have a battery technology breakthrough. There's no question about it. For the scale that we want to run electric vehicles in the future, the initiative to do that, there has to be a better battery solution.
Okay, so let's just for fun assume that there isn't, and that the lithium battery that we've developed thus far is the technology that we have to work with.
Oof.
So
yeah.
So when you take a look at the segment of electric vehicles that get sold into the marketplace and what it represents from an actual percentage of vehicles on the road, is it 1 or 2% in Canada and the US?
Oh, yeah,
it's a very low number.
Very low number.
Right?
So, might be higher in some other countries, but yeah.
So when you take a look at how much mining is involved and dirt moving that is involved in something like that, essentially what you're asking a company like Caterpillar to do is double or triple its output from a manufacturing perspective, because we would need to be opening up so many more mines.
Yes.
We would need to be moving that much more ore and minerals around the world. Mm-hmm. Does a company like Caterpillar, do you think that a company like Caterpillar has the ability to double and quadruple Potentially their output of machines in order to do this actual physical heavy lifting?
That's a great question. I would say doubling, probably not. Doubling in 30 years, potential, but doubling right away, no. I think that's slack. Whatever we can't produce, right, would have to be taken up by our competition.
But to use as an example, the best, most well-funded, established dirt moving company in the world as an example.
Yeah.
And let's just say that every single other one of your competitors was an equal, right? You guys, there were 4 large competitors. You each had 25% market share.
Yeah.
Would you all be able to double your production in the time that they're calling out for these net zero transitions, these electrified vehicle transitions? Like, I just don't see that happening.
What I fundamentally, I don't think right now we know if there's enough lithium in the world in reserve to be able to do this. Now, maybe it's going to be like oil and gas. Once we really start looking for it, maybe we'll find it, right? But there's no doubt about it. I mean, we're going to have to establish a lot of rock has to be moved in order to get the volume of lithium that we have touted as goals for the future.
Yes.
Right. That's why I really, really, really believe that for now, lithium is great. Okay. But I'm pretty sure we're going to need to have a more sustainable, higher power density battery technology that needs to be developed. What that is, I don't know.
The other thing that I've heard to complement what you just said there was, like, not only are we up against what could potentially be a lithium issue, and I'm not a geologist. I don't know how much lithium there is in reserve, but the other mineral that is hypercritical is copper.
Well, true. Yeah, because you've got all these motor windings you have to make, right?
How much more copper are we going to need? How much more copper goes into the production of a vehicle like what you're describing?
Yeah, significantly more than where we are today. There's no question about that.
Right.
Yeah, significantly more, because you got your motor windings. You also have to have the cords that can handle the current, which aren't, you got large gauge, conduit that's required to run these type of currents to your movers. And then not only that, but just all of the controllers that you need for the motors. You have to have inverters for every motor. There's a lot of electronics that go into it, and there's always going to be copper involved. You're absolutely right. Copper is also going to be a very valuable commodity in the future. No question about it.
And one of the things that I've seen recently is that it takes an average of 16 years to open up a copper mine in the world. And especially, in North America. In North America, I'm sure in Asia, they could open it up in 6 months.
Probably. Yeah.
Right? And so, I just wonder that with some of these, what I feel to be completely unachievable goals that we have, people spouting off, we're going to be net zero by this, and this many electric cars are going to be sold into the marketplace, and this is what it's going to look like. It's going to be a utopia. And then you run into somebody like you who, if I can use the 2x4 example as well, right? Like we started your career at the beginning of a 2x4.
Yes.
What do we need to do in order to do that? Well, we're doing the same thing with electric vehicles.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great goal. You want a 2x4. These are all the things that you need to do in order to get one.
Yeah.
Right.
What we need to understand is there is a lot of petroleum-based vehicles in the world.
Yeah.
Buses, highway rigs, everybody's passenger car, pickup trucks, everything. Right.
Transport.
It's just a lot. Yeah. To be able to replace that, where are you going to get the energy to run every one of those vehicles? Right? I mean, just say we can find enough copper and lithium, and we can produce all this stuff, and we can get over a lot of the technical and range humps, right? Because let's face it, a highway rig, if he has to stop every 4 hours to charge up, that's completely unreasonable. Trucker's not going to want to do that.
The expectations of what life on the North American continent changes, right?
Yes.
We end up having to build up a whole bunch of different infrastructure in order to support that endeavor, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Not saying it can't be done, right? But we've got a lot of work to do.
Yes.
If every vehicle is going to be electronically or electrically driven in the future, there is a tremendous amount of work to be done. And just to say that, oh, we can produce the cars, right? Well, where are you going to get all the charging stations, right?
Yes.
Where are you going to get the grid and electric power to charge all these vehicles? And if you're using coal or petroleum to produce electricity in order to charge the car, are you really net zero?
What's the point? You've just created another product for us to consume at that point. It's no better than driving a petroleum powered vehicle.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of the studies, like a lot of the longer range studies, there's a physicist, Canadian physicist, his name's Mark Mills. He did his whole presentation about this. He's like, this is how many barrels of oil you need in order to produce an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. And this is how many you need to produce a petroleum powered vehicle. Right. And it gets, he runs a graph out to, you have to drive that electric vehicle, like I think it's 190,000 kilometers before you meet the petroleum powered vehicle on the graph.
Yeah.
Right. So you think, you're just like, well, that's a lot.
Yes.
That's a lot. It's
it's
not as clean as people think.
Well, if you want truly clean energy, right, that in the form of electricity,
Yes.
right, we better start building some more dams because there's lots of valleys in British Columbia, okay, and there's nothing wrong with building dams. Is there enough water to fill them? I don't know. Guess we'll find out. Have we already maxed out our ability to be able to produce dams, right? Because when you look at that, that's a pretty friendly way of producing electricity.
Yes.
Right? It reduces a lot of flooding. It provides recreational lakes for everybody to enjoy their summer 2 weeks off. So there's a lot of good things about dams. Dams are not a bad thing.
No.
At all.
They're very controversial, especially in this province.
I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I don't know why either.
But when you say why can't we dam up more valleys? Yeah. Maybe we've already maxed that out. I've never really studied that before to understand. But we are blessed here that we can actually make dams, right? A lot of other places in the world are very, very limited. They can't do that. So where are they going to get their power? I mean, if you look at China today, they turn on coal plants every week over there.
Yep.
And coal obviously produces a lot of carbon. I mean, taking carbon out of the ground and putting it into the atmosphere to produce energy is not a good thing because we know that it creates greenhouse gas and, we're going to get some increase in temperature. It's already happening. So if we're going to stop that practice, we have to have an energy source that can produce all of the demand to charge up these batteries. Mm-hmm. Where are we going to get that?
Well, this, I guess, brings us to another topic that I wanted to talk about with you. And, if it's not hydro, we know that, where we live here, I mean, look at what's happening outside right now. You're not charging anything with a solar panel. And
Yep.
you're not spinning a wind turbine around, right? Maybe you are in some places, but it's pretty calm here. So having that intermittent power is not ideal. The great thing about the hydroelectric is that it's very consistent.
Yes.
Which is nice.
Yep.
Last I checked, hydroelectric represents, I think it's 93% of our provincial power supply.
Yeah, and which makes sense. We're blessed to be able to dam rivers here, which is, I would say, very unusual for most places in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
So one of the other power sources that we've discussed previously is the tokamak.
Yeah, the tokamaks. Yeah. Yeah, the fusion reactors.
And I just wondered if you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at fission reactors, nuclear plants, we've had three major catastrophes with that type of technology. Two of them led to meltdowns. One very close to meltdown. Arguably, you'd say it did melt down, and the Americans were able to cover it up pretty good. But I mean, we've had three major incidences with nuclear plants. It's extremely dangerous. And when things go wrong, things can really go wrong. Chernobyl's a very good example of that. So we need to understand that although when operating, they're pretty darn efficient. They can produce a lot of power, a nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
But the problem is they produce basically byproduct that's radioactive, right? They also pose a huge, huge safety concern if things go wrong, right?
The old technology.
Old
I've heard the
technology.
new technology in those reactors is a lot safer.
It is, and it's probably going to create a renaissance of that now that they've got a lot of these safety things figured out. Okay, but it's still not going to stop. What do you do with the spent fuel? Right.
Still an issue.
What are we going to do? Shoot it towards the sun? Anything can go wrong there. So what we need to understand is, okay, so the sun uses fusion, right, to produce energy. So there was a physicist in Russia back in the 50s that discovered that if you create a magnetic donut ring, that you can actually produce fusion in the form of plasma within this hollow donut of magnets, of superconductive magnets. That was in the 60s. The problem is it took more power input to the magnets than you could actually produce in heat from the fusion. A lot of it was based on scale of the actual tokamak, but the device is called a tokamak. It's basically a hollow donut-shaped ring of superconductive magnets, and if you take a slice out of it, the magnets would be in the shape of a D. So it's a donut. The size that they were working with back in the 50s and 60s were so small that it took more power in than you got out. So a lot of it was like, well, this doesn't make sense, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and then it was also a Russian invention, which Americans really didn't want anything to do with that in the Cold War, right? No. Because they were developing fission reactors. But to make a long story short, there is a new initiative that based on scale, because they've scaled up the size of these tokamaks over the years, and now they're actually at a point right now. The latest one, I believe, that was running in England, was able to produce 6 times as much power than what you put into it. Okay, so they said, okay, that's extremely viable.
Yes.
So if you put 1 kilowatt in, you got 6 out, or 5 or 7 out, or whatever.
Yep.
So they said, okay, that makes sense. Now we can do something that's viable. Now we have to be able to scale this thing up to make it understandable. Is this something that we can produce massive amounts of electricity with? So there's a project in southern France called the ITER, ITER. And that project is a proof of concept on a very large scale of a tokamak that is intended to be a proof of concept to show that if you build these things big enough, you can produce a tremendous amount of energy, and to be able to replace nuclear, coal burning, nuclear plants, wind, anything like that, that these things, multiples around the world can produce enough electricity that we can get away from all of these other alternatives and use a tokamak. The beauty of this type of technology is that the consumable is an abundant deuterium that is abundant in seawater. So the base fuel that goes into producing the plasma inside these donuts is basically seawater. Okay. Wow. There's some other inputs that are lesser important for volume, but there are some other elements that need to go into the reaction, okay, that can be recycled as well. The overall is the beauty of these things. If anything goes wrong, they can immediately be shut down because you just collapse your magnets. All you have to do is stop powering the magnets, and the plasma instantly disappears. They can be shut down immediately within a half a second. The whole thing can be collapsed.
Wow.
And they basically produce zero carbon. So you basically have zero carbon power generation, just like a dam. where you don't produce carbon.
And forgive my ignorance, but is it then this heat source is then creating steam, which is running the turbine?
Correct. Yes. The end product is the end process is just like any nuclear plant, where once you generate the heat, you collect the heat, convert it to steam, put it through a turbine, run it into the grid.
Yeah.
A turbine generator and put it into the grid, just like any dam or just like any other or any windmill.
Spin a wheel.
Yeah, basically your
Wheel of fortune.
yeah, spin it. You make it into rotary energy, which produces electricity. So all of that technology exists. This tokamak, they're well into the construction of this ITER project in southern France. I see this whole thing as our future of power. The unfortunate thing is that we're not going to have this probably realistically online producing commercial or like huge amounts of consumable electricity until probably the 2050. So we're still a long way from that. Okay. So what do we do in the meantime? What do we do? Keep doing what we're doing.
Well, we've got a lot of petroleum left.
Yes.
We've got a lot of coal left.
Yep. I mean, those aren't the favorable ways to produce electricity, especially the petroleum. Petroleum should never be used to produce electricity, because to me, I see that as a power density fuel that's made for mobile equipment.
Yeah.
Right. We shouldn't be using that. We shouldn't be running diesel engines to produce electricity.
No.
You got wind power. That's kind of ugly, bit of an eyesore, but is very, very prevalent in Europe. You travel anywhere in Europe, and you're going to see a lot of windmills, right? Wind power.
I think that the misconception is with a lot of these installations that it's like, oh yeah, we got some wind power, and there they are. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? And it's they're spinning around and making power, but people don't see the downside of that and how long those installations last for. And are they maintenance free? We go back to this whole Tesla thing. How many barrels of oil did we need to burn in order for you to have a vehicle that doesn't spit any of those emissions out of the tailpipe? Just to move the emissions somewhere else that you don't see them. It's the same thing with these giant turbines. Like, how long did they last? How much power do they produce versus how much does it cost to produce them?
Oh yeah, I mean, they're certainly the production of those windmills, whatever you want to call them. I mean, there's a lot of carbon goes into that. What's even worse is the amount of carbon that goes into solar panels. It's horrible. Like, to be carbon free, you have to run those things. I believe it's over 7 to 8 years before they're actually carbon neutral.
Right. And then if a hailstorm rolls over them in the interim,
and you got to replace them or whatever like that. So to me, the only real true carbon zero technology that's out there are dams.
Yeah.
And even that, you say, well, it took a lot
of concrete.
It took a lot of concrete. And it took a lot of bulldozers to make that dam, right? So even there, you could almost say that that's not carbon free. And it's the same with the tokamaks. It's going to take a lot of carbon emissions to be able to produce the plant, right? Mm-hmm. But at least as an ongoing basis, those things can produce zero carbon emission energy. And if we want to run cars on battery power, right? We've got the grid system pretty much, right? I mean, we've done a very good job at distributing electricity around the world, okay, through our electrical grid system. Do we have to upgrade some of that to be able to handle more current? Probably. First things first, we've got to be able to produce the power, right? Then you've got all your charging stations.
You got the distribution problem after you've been able to generate it. Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of challenges. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do, but in the meantime, we should not be chastised for running petroleum.
No.
Like I find it almost insulting, something like a carbon tax, right? To punish people for things that we've all been doing for the last 100 years.
Yeah.
Why are we being punished now for that? I don't understand it. Especially when they say, well, you've got a pickup truck, right?
Yeah.
Or you've got a highway rig. Why should you be paying a carbon tax when there really is no realistic alternative? Right? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right? So I really struggle with that.
Canada's having a real issue with this right now.
Yeah, and it's Europe too. They're punishing you for living the lifestyle that everybody set up for ourselves.
They've set up.
Yes, right? We're being punished for living the lifestyle
Yes.
that we all have agreed to live,
Yes.
right? Which doesn't make sense to me. I mean, and it's their incentive to say, well, we got to push you into electric technology. And you're going like, number one, electric cars cost a lot more,
Yeah, that's right.
right? And we don't have the electrical power to charge them all. So when we get to that point, then I would say that maybe a carbon tax makes sense because there's truly an alternative.
Right.
But right now, there's no realistic alternative.
Yeah. So, so I guess the argument would be is that we're taxing you and taking that money and putting it into green infrastructure and potentially opening up
But are they?
lithium mines with that and subsidizing the companies in order to go in and get those minerals that we need in order to have that transition happen, right? And I don't know. I mean, it just seems like a bit like a cash grab to me in this country.
I agree. I think, I mean, it's to me, it's the same as these education lotteries. Is that money really going to education?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's like,
What's it actually going towards?
what is it?
The
Where does that
difference
money
it
actually
could be making?
follow the trail and see if it actually is going into these alternative programs? I doubt it.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that's that. But tokamaks, that's the future for electrical production. We want to be carbon free. It's still a long way away. That's for sure. Yeah.
And again, I mean, you know, I've there's obviously a lot of information out there that's coming to light in regards to carbon in the atmosphere. Historically, what have those levels looked like? How much carbon have we had in the atmosphere over the last 6,500, 250 million years or whatever? It's a lot more than what we have now. And I've heard people say that carbon dioxide is it's the gas of life. I mean, without it, we wouldn't have any green plants. We wouldn't have an agricultural sector. We wouldn't be here as prolifically as we are now. Mm-hmm. And I've also heard some stats where if carbon dioxide levels go below 150 parts per million in the atmosphere, there is no green life.
Well, no, I mean that's where plants get their carbon to produce their volume.
Yeah.
So, or a big chunk of it, right? It's not all coming out of the ground. Mm-hmm. So absorption of carbon dioxide, turning it into oxygen, that's key to have to have plants.
Plant food.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
food.
carbon cycle.
Yeah.
You know, are we putting in more carbon than what is required naturally? Probably. But what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to drive a vehicle. Everybody wants to heat their house, right? These are the alternatives. So burning fossil fuel and coal is not going to go away, right? All we can do is eventually develop technology to replace it, okay? But in the meantime, we should not be punished for doing something to make our lives better.
Yes.
Right?
Well said.
Right? I mean, it's just, that's the way we've set up our society. We got to continue to live that way for now, you know? Now, should we be pursuing alternative energy? Absolutely. And like I say, tokamak's the way to go.
So this brings up another question that I wanted to tie into, and this ties into the developmental work that you've been doing on this new tracked
drive motor.
Yep. One of the questions that kind of came to me was why? You know, if we have these technologies that are working beautifully now, why would you develop something that's so much more beyond the technology that we have now? Why do we need to do that?
It's called evolution of. It's just called evolution of development.
Yep.
It's like, why did we put air conditioners into cars?
Yes.
Why did we? Why did we? It's you just make things better over time.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, think about when, just all the stuff that we had with the with our vehicles. I mean, it used to be that you'd have to go in and tune up engines. You'd have to get spark plugs and new points, and you had to have a technician and set the timing and all. All of that's gone now, right? We're smart enough to avoid having to do a lot of these inconvenient things to keep things running.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing in the industry I'm in. Right. Every time that you make a new generation machine, you try to make it more efficient. You try to make it more comfortable for the operator. You try to make, just like your trucks.
So
just
that
like
they want to be in this little module, doing more work, being more productive, adding more value.
Yep.
Right? So you're making the interiors more comfortable. You're making it so that they can be more efficient in the field with motion and use less fuel and all of that. Why would we innovate? Why would we improve?
It's just human nature.
Just because we want to have as comfortable of an experience as possible. Why would we generate this new tokamaks? Why would we develop that? Why would we develop any of these clean technologies? Because that's what we do. We make things better.
That's right. We do make it. I have all the faith that human beings will continue to thrive on this planet. I don't think there's any alternative solutions at this point to be able to move off this planet, although they have initiatives to go to Mars and things like that. But that's obviously about as far as we're ever going to be able to go. Yeah. What's clear to me is that the complaint about global warming is driving technology to its limit right now. I mean, we are really pushing development, which I think is a really good thing. I see global warming as a very strong nudge to do things that we should have been doing back in the 50s and 60s. Right, because we had fledgling technology back then, but we just kind of sat on it and shelved it. And now we're taking that technology off the shelf, and we've got this massive movement to push this new technology forward, right? Which is going to make everybody's life in the future a lot better, right? So maybe it's kind of human nature to go through a bit of a crisis in order to get us to do the right things.
Right.
And I see global warming as part of that whole thing. Climate change is that it's pushing us to do the right things. Now, what's going to be interesting to see is if we get a lot more ice melting, Antarctica, Greenland, etc. What's going to happen to our low-lying coast, right?
The same thing that happened to it during the end of the last ice age.
Yeah, it gets flooded.
It's going to go up by 400 feet, and Vancouver doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and that's when the real big push will come in, right? For the change.
But Paul, you and I both know that at the end of the last ice age, it had nothing to do with the amount of carbon in the atmosphere that caused that flooding.
No, right? It was things getting back to normal. We go through a cycle. Earth goes through a cooling and heating cycle. We've been a heck of a lot hotter in the past than we are right now, especially at the age of the dinosaurs, right? So do we know that life will exist on the planet if it gets a lot hotter? Hell yeah, it will. Because it has in the past, right?
Yes.
Now, will it be uncomfortable for humans? No, humans are pretty smart. They kind of tend to go to where things are a little bit, more comfortable temperature-wise, right?
And not only that, but with everything that we've just discussed in this conversation already, we know that we have the ability to innovate and change our environment and adapt.
Oh, absolutely.
When it's minus 40 outside, we know that we can adjust the hydraulics of this machine and change the saw blades in order to cut it so that tree doesn't break in half. We can do the same thing in our environments that we create for ourselves. We can tweak and dial and change things with more insulation, better mechanical systems, better ways to heat that are cleaner, that make it so that we could endure a colder session like this, like what Eastern Canada is experiencing right now with the 4 feet of snow they've had overnight.
Yep.
Or in this climate where we get 50 degrees centigrade days in the summertime. You know, we have the ability to augment our environment and make our environmental separators, which is what a house is, a building is, a machine is, more comfortable for us to be in.
I don't think that increasing the temperature is a really bad thing.
I don't think so either.
I think it's going to be the sea rise, the volume of the sea level coming up on low-lying countries, right? That are going to be where the problem comes in. People are going to have to pack up and go to higher ground. That's basically what's going to happen. That's going to be where the big push comes from. It's not getting warmer. It's when your water starts getting higher, when your sea levels start getting higher.
I agree with you on that. And that brings up another question that I've had recently. It's like I ask people, they're like, well, global warming. And I'm like, okay, well, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
Global cooling?
How are we going to do that?
And you're like, is that what you want? You want like a nuclear winter you want to see a kilometer of ice where you live currently? Because that's what used to be here.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much influence over temperature to create these massive swings.
No, it doesn't.
Right? I mean, and we've gone through many of this over the years or over the eons, right? Multiple ice ages, and that's got a lot to do with the orbit of the Earth around the sun and how we get further and closer and all that stuff. So, it's one of those things. What shocks humans is how fast it's happening, right? Some of it's probably naturally occurring. Some of it could be increased carbon in the atmosphere and everything like that. But is it? I think it's that things are changing. People are alarmed, right? But in the long run, are we all going to die if it goes up 1 degree? No.
Absolutely not.
Or 2 degrees?
Absolutely not.
Right. So it's one of these things where eventually we will reduce our carbon dioxide emission. We will, right? Because we want to move that way, right? And as long as we do that in an economical and smart, safe way, that we move away from that, eventually we'll get a handle on this, right? And maybe things do go back to what nature is intending for our temperature swings.
Yeah. I to be honest with you, I don't think that anything that we could do on Earth would have any effect on the temperature of the planet. I don't think there's anything that we could do either way. We stopped doing this and it had an effect. We did more of this and it had an effect. I don't think it matters. I think the only thing that matters is our proximity to the sun. That's
it. The biggest.
That's the only factor that matters, unfortunately. People like to get all wrapped up about carbon, and carbon's one of those things that's interesting to point at, because it's like, well, you have a car, you're driving down the road, you're creating carbon, you heat your house with this fuel, you got to pay this tax, and you're just like, you're saying to yourself, you're just like, yeah, okay, what difference is that going to make when you consider that cloud vapor, right, water vapor in the atmosphere is way bigger of a greenhouse gas and far more prevalent in the environment than any carbon we could throw up in the air. The plus minus in these climate models for water vapor equals the carbon dioxide in the model.
Yeah.
Right? And when you figure that out, you're just like, oh, so they're just using that as a lever in order to be able to tax us more and control what we do. And I just like, I don't like that.
I think that I mean, again, the tax is unfair. Like,
yes.
Why are we being punished for I'm repeating the same thing again, but why are we being punished for the lifestyle that everybody has agreed to live?
Yes.
Like,
good question.
It doesn't make sense to me, right? Yeah. It really doesn't, right?
Yeah. So I guess, yeah. Anyway, yeah.
China.
So yeah. So let's go to China.
China's very interesting. Very, very interesting. We had an initiative to scout out some potential suppliers in China. So we sent a team over this summer to investigate that for a week. And we went to some of the bigger hydraulic component suppliers over in China. And that was an interesting. one thing that really came clear to me when I visited there was they're very organized. Chinese are very organized people. Okay, it was a lot cleaner than what I expected to see. Right, they're very organized. They really have it together. Right, we need to really take them seriously on their industrial might. They really have a very strong industrial footprint. It's mind-boggling to understand the capacity of their production over there.
And this is coming from somebody that has spent
Oh,
a lot of time in other manufacturing facilities in Europe whereby you would say that the majority of the highest end products that we would interface with come from. You're saying that China comparatively is just a monster.
well, I'll put it this way: the biggest hydraulic component. I mean, I keep going back to hydraulics because that's what
Yes.
I've known, right? But if I go there and some of these bigger facilities in Europe that I deal with, right, that the equivalent in China are at least 50% bigger
Wow.
in capacity and in size than the biggest stuff in Europe. And there's multiple places like that in China. The government has spent a lot of money. It's really clear that the individuals running these companies, right, although they claim it's their company, there is no way that you can go from a clean, like zero, to the capacity that they have in 10 years without
Yes.
some sort of government influence. It's impossible. It's absolutely impossible. Because in our society, the government's not going to help you.
No.
Right? It's not going to help you. You're on your own. As a matter of fact, the government's there to actually tax you as much as they absolutely can.
They're jockeying you.
Yes.
They're on your back, whipping you.
Yes, whipping you, hoping that you make a lot of tax money for them.
And that you
Okay?
don't die while they're riding you.
Yes.
Yes.
And what ends up happening is where these companies started 10 years ago from conception to where they are today, that is absolutely impossible to do in North America or in Europe. It's impossible because there is no way that you can build up enough profit and capital to be able to reinvest to the extent to get that 10-year massive plant goal that you have. It's impossible.
Yes.
Our economic system that we have with the governments that we have in Europe and in North America don't allow that.
No.
Right? You cannot build up enough cash flow to be able to do this. Whereas these companies in China have been able to go from grassroots nothing to the biggest manufacturing plants in the world within 10 years. And it's like, well, where did the money come from? Right? And it's very clear that they're being subsidized. And another thing that they do is they basically copy. They take American, North American, and European and Japanese and other technologies around the world, and they just blatantly copy it. So they don't go through that 4 to 8 year development stage for a new product.
Yeah.
They go from copying to series production in 8 months. So it's really unfair. And how is that fair that they copy somebody's technology, blatantly copy it, and then move to series production that's government subsidized, right? It's very attractive for us.
Yeah.
Because we're saying, okay, we can get good technology at a lower cost, okay? But most ethical companies, including the one I work for, will avoid that because they respect patents and
Intellectual
development,
property.
Intellectual property.
Yeah.
And so it's a dilemma that's going to it's a dilemma that's going to come to a head here pretty quick for a lot of big corporations. Is how do you deal with this I'll put it very sensitive IP situation.
Yes.
And how do you deal with that? And but it was a very interesting tour. I got to see some industry that was just massive. We drove by a steel plant that I think the overall length from one end of the campus to the other end was something like 3.5 or 4 kilometers long,
Wow.
and it was just massive.
Unbelievable.
I mean, just massive places of manufacturing there in China, and lots of people working, lots of organization, lots of stuff going on there. There's no question about it. We need to take China extremely seriously on their ability to be able to produce things, and we're not talking about stuff that goes into Walmart. No, they are producing cars. They're producing like heavy equipment. I mean, Sany is that's one of the bigger manufacturers over there, called SANY, Sony.
Yes.
And they're starting to make a footprint now in North America.
I've seen their ads on Instagram.
Yeah,
They're advertising to us.
They are starting to become a very serious competitor to us, and a lot of that success is based on the support from the Chinese government for these internal companies, right?
So
Support.
What a concept.
That's what's really bizarre, is that they're supporting these companies both financially, with technology, with everything, to make their country more competitive with the world.
Yes.
You could almost say almost too competitive with the world, right? That seems not the case in Europe and everything like that. It seems that big corporations are the enemy. That's almost what it's like here, is that big corporations are the enemy and should therefore be taxed, right? And it's really sad. It's really sad that if you want to be an up and coming manufacturer, say, hey, I want to open up a brand new mine somewhere, and I want to mine lithium because we found a big deposit over near Creston or something.
Yes.
And what's going to happen is there going to be huge amounts of government money to promote you, to get you up and running in like 5 or 6 years so you can be competitive with the Chinese. There's no support like that here. No. It's almost sad.
It is sad. It's embarrassing that what we're spending our money on as a country, when we could be spending it on developing technologies and mines and developing our natural resource sector in order to support the improved industrial environment that we live in.
Yeah, we have to. There's no question about it. We've got the resources here. We need to further develop it, right? Yeah. And if that means bringing in more trades or developing more skilled workers, right?
Yes.
The government needs to be spending money on, rather than spending money promoting people not to work, right? They need to be spending on money to make people that want to work more successful, right? Being training, giving them opportunity to work in high skilled jobs, yes. Right? And if they decide to go out on their own, not to punish them tax wise, but to give them tax incentives to be able to hire more people, be successful, get into the resource base, get things flowing, and get money rolling, right? The government, and it's not just Canada, it's also the United States. There's a lot of suppression of the government to do things. I mean, you take an example in the United States, there is so much red tape that is based around opening up a foundry.
Yes.
In the United States, that there has been no significant development of any new iron foundries in the States since the 70s. And it's like trying to get castings and steel in the United States. It's almost impossible. That's why there's so much import of castings, and it's not because America can't produce castings. It's because there is so much red tape to open up a plant, environmental and logistics and all of this stuff, that nobody does it anymore. Nobody can afford to open up a foundry. And it's just mind-boggling to me, is to say there's a huge demand for castings, iron ore castings and steel castings, and they can't be produced.
So one of my best friends, Craig Johnson, he works very close to the same area that you were working for in the beginning of your career. He works for Teck over in the Kootenays.
Yeah.
I think he's based out of Cranbrook or somewhere in there, Creston or somewhere. And the mine that he works in is one of the largest coal mines in North America.
Yep.
And they have a really high grade of coal that they pull out of the ground, and every single scoop of it goes on a train that has its own track.
Yeah.
And every scoop of it gets loaded onto a boat and shipped over to China.
Yes, because they produce iron. And they produce steel products with it.
So that they can produce steel products.
And electricity. They also use it to, I'm sure they use it.
And they burn it, the lower grades in their electrical generation. Mm-hmm. But isn't that goes back to what we were talking about, shipping raw logs out? It's like, how could it, could you imagine buying a 2x4 from Japan after we shipped them the raw log?
Yeah,
how ridiculous that would be.
Yep.
That's essentially what we're doing with these steel products that you're talking about, though.
Yep.
There's no more foundries. No. We're going to offshore all those jobs and all that value add to somebody else, and they're going to send us castings back.
Well, I mean, I went into a facility in China, and they're the manufacturers of these components, right? They have their own foundries. That's completely unheard of in North America or Europe. I only know of one company that I deal with that has their own foundry. And it's you go there, and this one company, right? They had 4 furnaces. They were building a 5th line while I was there. They had 4 furnace lines, right? Which is the capacity of a lot of the foundries that are existing in the United States. This is one company producing it just for themselves.
Unbelievable.
And it's like it's on a scale over there that it's just mind-boggling, like what's going on in China. But either way, I mean, just the sheer red tape and almost the suppression of industry in Canada and the United States. It's not right. We should be promoting this a lot more. We should be promoting a lot more skilled labor. We should be promoting a lot more industry that we can go toe to toe with China with. If we don't, we are going to lose to China. And it's going to be that everything is going to come from China.
So they're fighting.
Or India. India's also up and coming.
Instead of fighting a hot war with China, we're fighting a manufacturing war. We're fighting a currency war with them right now, where they're taking all of the good things about our country, adding value to them, and then selling them back to us.
Yes.
In a lot of instances, in the form of garbage. So we send you our most valuable resources in the form of bitumen or coal or logs or whatever else. You make little trinkets out of them, ship it back to us. We enjoy it for a period of time, and then it ends up in the landfill.
Yes.
That's your gift to us. That's our gift to us.
The Walmart cycle.
The Walmart cycle, right? And then that's to say nothing of any of the other, as we've just discussed, like really technical components that we have invested all of our intellectual property and time and money and development resources into, which they just simply copy with the resources that we ship them. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's really clear that their motive, China, is to be the dominant manufacturing economic power of the world. After that trip, there was no question in my mind. That is the long-term goal, and they are getting darn close to being number one. Right, America still produces, their GOP is still higher, but it's getting very, very, very close in China. Probably just a couple more years, and China will absolutely take over North America.
I want you to elaborate on something that you said previously about how you used the term suppressed. We're suppressing manufacturing in this country when we should be promoting it and advancing it and training more people.
Just hey, I got an idea. I want to open up a plant that produces specialty metal products in Canada, right? There's an opportunity there. So I want to open up a small foundry. I want to get some, press machines in. I probably need some settling ponds, and I need some stuff, right? Okay. Just getting the permits to be able to do that, the red tape, the suppression, the amount of capital that you have to fork out in order to be able to just get the land to break,
Yes.
right? To be able to
Yes.
produce this. It is so overwhelming that people just throw in the towel.
We'll do that in Asia.
Yeah, and then they'll just say, "Yeah, we'll move to Asia, right? Because I can go and I can convince local governments over there to give me a really good deal on the land, right? And they will help me get through the bureaucracy to be able to produce it over there in China because
I've got
they
friends.
want that.
I've got friends in the mineral sector in Canada that I can just make a phone call and they can ship it directly to us, and we'll add all the value over there instead.
Yeah, I mean it's just literally the trend is that the path of least resistance is to go to India, go to China, go to Asia, because a lot less red tape.
Yeah.
Government's there to help you,
Yes.
not hinder you.
Where countries have not been strangulated by bureaucracy.
Yes. That's basically what happens. And the perfect example of that, I keep coming back to it, is the foundries.
Yeah, because it's such a rudimentary, like everything starts with a molten block of steel.
Yes.
Everything we do.
Yeah, I mean anything to do like axles, your engine block, like all these castings, and
Every single one of these tripods that these cameras are on, this microphone, the steel that's holding this table together.
the number one hindrance of me developing components with my suppliers in the United States and Asia are castings. That's the number one hindrance,
So
is
embarrassing.
being able to get a economical iron casting, ductile or just gray iron castings, right? Is just what you would say is a fundamental, stupid, simple component, right? I mean, it's a dumb, simple component, is the most difficult thing to obtain, to start a project. And they're forced to go to China.
How embarrassing.
It is almost embarrassing.
What an
It's
embarrassment.
it's like that used to be like when we were developing cars, the car industry in the United States. I mean, there were foundries all over the place, but now it's boiled down to just a handful of the bigger players that are left, and trying to get castings out of them is almost impossible. And they just go like, "We don't want new work.
Nope.
We don't want any new work."
Nope. We're fine. We're at capacity.
We're at
If we
full
need new work,
capacity.
we'd need a new facility that we'd need to go through all the bureaucratic process in order to be able to build.
Yes.
Then we'd have to find skilled people to run the operations of the factory, which we've deleted those people from society. We don't have any more of those.
Yep.
All of those people are retiring. We can't find enough of them to run the factories that we're currently running.
So and that boils down to, like, I mean, we're stagnating a lot of the industry, right? And we're definitely not promoting the trades. We're not promoting. I mean, when I look at it, I'm an engineer. I work for one of the bigger, land earth moving equipment companies in the world, and I do not have my mechanical engineering degree. But yet I'm considered a senior design engineer at Caterpillar, right? Because of my experience.
Yes.
Okay. And I went through the school of hard knocks to get where I am, right? Because I didn't have a degree. And I had to work really hard in order to be where I am today. Okay. I spent a lot of cold days developing machines out in the woods in my youth. And so I went through the ringer to get where I am today. But I worked hard and I promoted myself over the years, and I was willing to learn. And I do believe that there's a lot of people like that, okay? But there's also a lot of people that just say, well, if I do nothing, I don't have to work.
Yeah.
Right? I can squeak by with whatever the government will support us. What the government needs to do is they need to be able to promote people into low-cost college or trade schools at low or no cost, right? In order to be able to get them trained up to at least a basic level that they can go out in and get an entry level apprenticeship or whatever like that, right? With a certificate that says, I've got a year's worth of technical training, good background technical training. I know how to do some math. I know about property materials. I know about some basics about hydraulics and electrical and mechanical and stuff like that. Value to somebody like yourself that you can bring to them and say, I've got the basics.
Yes.
Can you hire me? Right? And you're a lot
Put me
more
behind
attractive.
something.
Yeah, and they need to have that. I guess arguably you could say that that's all part of the of shop in high school, right? You can get your
Which
basic stuff.
they're deleting as well.
Yeah, which and you look at that in the States now, it's almost completely deleted out of the system, right? They just see no value in that, right?
No.
And kids today, because they're not exposed to that, what they see is that they want to be an influencer on TikTok because somebody else is making a whole bunch of money doing that.
nothing.
And I think I can do that too. Go out there and act silly on TikTok and make some money, right? So there's no incentive for them to be able, there's no government incentive, right? And there's no practical way for them to jumpstart a trades career. Because, I mean, I started out as a millwright when I was young.
Yes.
That's when I came out of basically high school. And I started out doing millwrighting work, and now I'm a senior engineer at Caterpillar, and I mean, making great money.
Yeah.
And I think that people, young kids today, need a push to be able to go into more high-tech trades, and we need a government that's backing them. We need a government that's actually pushing them and providing the pathway in which they can get there. I mean, that is so important. I mean, it's just absolutely critical to understand, because it's the only way that we are going to be competitive against the Asians, China and India, places like that.
I want to read you this one thing that is very, very much aligned with what you just said. A simple solution to multiple problems in Ontario. 1, reduce tuition for medicine, nursing, and the trades to zero.
Bingo.
To zero.
To zero. Yes.
Solution number 2, double tuition for social sciences, arts education to reflect the true cost of delivering these programs. More doctors and plumbers, fewer art history majors. What a concept, right? So we've been telling kids for the last 30, 40 years, don't work with your hands. Work over here in the information technology sector, or do this, or work with your mind, right? Meanwhile, we have all of the people that have been very diligently working with their hands over the years, developing new products, getting ready to, as you are, retire.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And so now who is replacing somebody like you who has a whole world of experience? Who's replacing?
The stuff coming up from the bottom that I'm seeing that we're hiring as new recruits, the 22-year-olds coming in and working for Caterpillar, the quality of these educated people and their ambition, right, has significantly reduced over the last 20 years that I've been at Caterpillar.
Unbelievable. That's terrifying.
It is what it is what it is because we don't promote technical, and I like what you just read. Zero tuition for doctors and engineers and trades.
Yes.
Absolutely. Why not?
$0. Subsidize. You live here for free. You go to school here for free. Please, we need more of you.
Yep. Well, it's very similar to Germany. If you're a resident of Germany, you get free education.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I don't know about the housing part of it, but you definitely get free tuition. So I could move to Germany as a youth and be educated in engineering over there free of charge.
Yes.
Right. You can't do that in Canada, United States.
This is just another example.
University is a huge profit-based industry in the States, right? They want to make lots and lots and lots of money, right? And that shouldn't be the way. there should be more government influence, tax money, that goes into producing what would be critical jobs,
Yeah.
engineering, trades, doctors, and doctors, not lawyers, doctors.
Jobs that would maintain the industrial advantage that we have enjoyed for the last, what do we want to say, 100 years on this continent?
Yep.
Jobs that would fortify our communities. Because we think like, it's like, well, what do we need more plumbers for? What do we need more millwrights for? Well, it's just like, well, it's like, that's easy for you to say right now that everything's running. But the minute something stops running, like a mill or a massive water treatment plant that supplies you with all of your clean drinking water,
if you can't get a millwright to fix it, you're in trouble.
you're fucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's easy for people to say right now, oh, well, what do we need those trades? We got enough of those people already.
No, that's
not the case.
That's absolutely not the case.
No.
That is absolutely not the case.
No, it isn't.
Right. I mean, just the sheer fact, trying to find. I mean, there's a I would say a moderate influx of immigrants coming into Canada. Right.
A huge influx of immigrants coming into Canada. Not maybe in comparison.
I'd look at it moderate based on the population of Canada. You always got to remember the population density of Canada is extremely low. Right, it's extremely low. I mean, think about it. You got the population of California in the second largest country in the world.
It's true, but if we're looking at it from a seats in a theater perspective, right, and the infrastructure and number of bathroom stalls to serve the people in the theater.
Yes.
And we're inviting that many more people into the theater every year. You're like, well, where the fuck are all these people going to sit? Where are they going to go pee?
Yeah, and it's on a scale, anyways. So, but bottom line is, there are people that want to come to Canada because it's a nice place to live, right? Okay, and I think that being number one. How did the government allow housing to be so expensive here now?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how that was allowed to be driven out of sight, right?
Yep.
Young people today cannot afford to buy a house. And that's a real shame in a first world country. Right? That is a shame.
A G7 country.
We are a G7 country, and our kids, right, that want to work cannot afford to buy a house. Like, that is ridiculous. That is not right. How did that happen? How did our government allow that to happen, right? And what steps are they going to take to make it better, right? I mean, they have to be able to give incentive for housing, right? So what does that mean? I mean, just our personal situation where you cannot develop your land next door, right? I mean, that's a completely different topic. We won't get into that. But it's an example of how we are in a big problem trying to produce the housing that we need for this country, right? And unless we get a handle on that, the price of property is going to continue to stay high, right? Because there's always there's going to be a shortage of housing, right? Okay. We've got to open up more crown land, right? To be able to homestead. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Yes.
Here. We got lots of land in Canada. We got way more land than we do people, right? Why is not more federal land being opened up to say, you're a young couple, okay? You're a plumber and you're a nurse, right?
Yeah.
Why can't, with those two careers, right? Why can't they afford a house? That's a shame.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the federal government says, okay, if you're willing to move over here a little bit and maybe do a bit of
like they used to.
Yeah, like do a bit of a commute to get to your job, we will give you some of this land, not give it, but we will make it extremely affordable, and we will give you major incentives to build a structure and start raising your family.
Yeah.
There's none of that here.
No. Here's a catalog of houses that we have that are pre-engineered, ready for permit with all of the documents.
Oh, even
any
better.
jurisdiction in the country has to, by law, accept these building plans, and they have to turn the permit around in a week.
Yeah, no red tape. Just get rid of all the red tape.
Zero.
Yes.
Here's the land.
Yep.
It costs this much. Here's the set of plans that you can choose from or not. Or not.
Yep.
You don't have to choose this house. But if you do, we also have a cost analysis on how much is this going to. There's no surprises.
Yeah, and we've also got a base of tradesmen that know how to work with these packages and do it in a very costly, effective way of putting this housing up for you. Absolutely. John, it's remarkable to me that there's not any of that. How can they not see that these tent cities are a result of people that can't afford housing? Like, get it together.
Yeah.
Something has to come together here. And it's not just Canada. There's the similar problems in Europe and United States, right? Why is land so expensive? Why is real estate so completely out of control?
I want to get back to this, but I want to get back to this. But before we do that, I also want to substantiate what it is you're saying and the importance of deleting the bureaucracy in our country in order to achieve these affordability goals that you're laying out. Let's talk about that facility that your friend from Italy. What was the story you told me about? They moved their operations over to China, or what was it? It was something about you ordered something from China. They said that it was 18 months or something like that till they could deliver.
Yeah.
But they hadn't built the factory yet. And you told me the story about how they had broken ground, built the factory, and we're 2 months ahead of schedule of delivering these components.
That was actually that's in Mexico.
It was Mexico.
Mexico, really interesting situation happening in Mexico right now. Mexico is the new hot place for a lot of these big manufacturers now to move in. You've got really interesting. You've got you've got lots of people that are willing to do these assembly and trades type work. Okay. It'll absolutely stop the flood of immigrants trying to go into the United States, which always seems to be a big political, snarl down there. It's they're doing it quick. Cut through all the red tape. There's just, you can go in there, you can set up these facilities. It's like one of my big suppliers, Bosch Rexroth. They're opening up a facility in Mexico. It's public knowledge now. We're going to start getting product there because their North American facility is just, they're basically at full capacity. They can't produce any more product, and our demand is there for it.
Yeah.
So they're opening up a plant. But it was just remarkable to me how quickly they said from breaking ground to producing product. It was just over a year. It was just
unbelievable.
That is like cutting through all the crap that you would normally have to deal with, right? I mean, in Canada, it would probably take you a year of planning just to be able to break ground.
No, it wouldn't. It would take way longer than that.
Yeah. So
if you were planning on building a manufacturing facility that would aid and abet the largest dirt moving company in the world to be able to produce more product to make life on the planet better. Yep. Do you know what the bureaucrats would see? They would just see dollar signs. Oh, well, we can drag this out with an environmental permit, and we can drag this out with another study of an impact study on planning and development, and what. Maybe we should do a neighborhood impact study and go around and talk to all the neighbors. How do you feel about this plant being in your community, giving you more jobs and the ability to build more homes and all these?
Well, we have to have a moratorium, right? We have to have a moratorium on this, right?
And we'd have to also lift a moratorium too. That's going to require some more public consultation. Meanwhile, if the fucking investors are looking at it going, okay, bye, we're out.
Yeah, we're out. We're into Mexico. We're into India. We're into wherever.
Bye. Yeah. And when you hear somebody like Elon Musk talk, he says, for every job that we create in a factory, because what you're just describing, there are 5 service industry jobs.
Oh, absolutely.
5 service industry
logistics, housing, grocery stores, everything, because you're just
mechanics,
places
to sleep.
Yep.
You know, the houses that you need to create for the workers to sleep in, the maintenance required on those houses. Like, people just have no fucking clue. The detrimental effects of saying no to development. They have no clue. No clue.
Yeah, and a lot of it is environmental based and social. Oh well, we don't want the smell of diesel trucks going by our house, even though my husband wants to work at the factory, right? I mean, it's just it's crazy how we have handcuffed ourselves from being more competitive in the marketplace. But the rest of the world's going like, we know how to cut through all this red tape, right? We can start breaking ground pretty much immediately. Right.
Yeah, well, that's right over there. Like, if somebody came to me and said, okay, listen, there's no more red tape. Okay. We need houses. Get to work.
Right? That's the way it should be. No.
You look around, you're like, okay, well, we're on the largest concentration of water in the Okanagan Basin. Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to drill wells till we hit water all the way along this shelf for 6 kilometers.
Yeah, why not?
We've got a main road. We're going to pave it, and we're going to make little branch roads.
No, I mean,
that go up into the hillside.
Yeah, absolutely. And why isn't that happening? I don't understand.
And then what we're going to do is we're going to build a big factory that builds wall panels and window assemblies and roofs and floors and the rest of it. And we're going to put all that stuff on a truck after we've built all of it and fly it up to one of these little sites. There's a house. There's another one. There's another one.
Yeah, and it's not busting into the sacred, pristine agricultural freeze that they have here, right?
No.
That's a no touch, and that's pretty clear that you got to make wine, right? So
You got to make wine, a lot of it.
You got to make wine. That's very important.
Yeah.
And that busting into Crown land, right, has to happen. It just flat out has to. Right, because there's no reason why you can't. Right, between here we're at the end of the road here, and beyond here, it's Crown land. Right, and you're going like there is plenty of good build sites just out here. And what is the detriment? We're not allowed to put houses down in orchards, but why can't we just go 5 miles up the road and put houses on Crown land?
Do you know why? Let me tell you why. The reason why we're not able to do that, and I'd hate to get too localized here with this discussion, but the reason why we are unable to do that now is because the regional district of the Okanagan-Similkameen, in all of their intelligence and glory, just came up with this is a new zone that they just came up with last June 15th, and it's called the Watershed Resource Area Zone. And what they've done is they've taken any government-held pieces of land that weren't developed, and they've grouped this entire area that's behind us now to the west, to Princeton, all the way and beyond, this new zone. And the permitted uses in this zone: first use, agriculture; second use, conservation area; third use is outdoor recreational use.
No residential.
Nope. Oh, minimum parcel size, 120 hectares. So in order to be able to do any of those things, you need to have 120 in order to subdivide.
So in other words, they don't want anything to happen.
No. Oh, you know what they're fine to do, though? They're fine to dole out as many different logging permits, which I believe in. Yes, absolutely. Let's promote industry.
Yes.
So but we could go back there. We can clear cut to our heart's content, do whatever we want to do, completely level and replant the forest. Great, wonderful. But we can't build a fucking house up there?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make any sense.
And especially when they have so much land locked up in agricultural freeze, which I'm semi-okay with, all right? I would prefer that is producing food and not alcohol.
Okay.
But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But if that land is locked up for agriculture, then open up the same volume of land that is premium for residential in these areas and open that up on Crown land. Like, the demand is there. People want to live in the Okanagan Valley.
Yeah, they do.
Why are they being punished to do that? I don't
Because
understand that.
we have boards of these. We have these executive boards that are predominantly filled with people who are retired school teachers or orchardists, or archivists that have worked at the museum for 30 years. And these are the people who have time to be on these boards, the water boards and whatever else. And they're making the decisions. They're the not in my backyard people. They don't want development here. They want their nice, quiet, little safe community that there's nobody lives in besides them. And they don't want change. They don't want growth. They're ignorant of the demand in the marketplace. They've got their blinders on. And there are too many of those people who are not elected officials, right? We don't have the opportunity to fire these people with a democratic vote every 4 years. These are people who could potentially be permanently installed on some of these boards of directors for their whole career.
Yeah.
They're making these development decisions, like at the regional district. It's unbelievable.
Basically, the way I'm seeing the Okanagan right now is they just basically want a population freeze. They want a population freeze, which that is a recipe for disaster, right? Keeping money from coming in here, right? If you freeze your population, you have now stagnated your economy. There's no
As
question
much
about
money
it.
as is in your economy now, is it?
That's it.
That's it. And people are dying and retiring.
Well, like I say, a freeze. Like there'll always be that you die, somebody replaces you type mentality. But I mean, basically, the freeze is on. That's really clear. I mean, even the situation I'm in right now, trying to get an affordable house here, right, that suits my needs, right, and I'm willing to develop a piece of land, but there's no land.
There's no land available. What piece of land?
Yeah, I know, and that's
besides-
what's really frustrating.
Besides living in like a sardine can development, right, where you're sandwiched up against your neighbor.
And I shouldn't have to do that. I've worked hard my whole life to be able to want to live where I want to live, right? I should be able to. In a country like Canada, I'm a Canadian citizen. I should be allowed to have access to a piece of land that I can build a house on. And it just seems that that's not the case here.
So you come back to your country of origin. You want to find a rural property
Yes.
that you could develop, build a house on.
Yes.
Like
That was the plan.
Like everybody wants to do that is in your demographic. They're like, okay, well, what's the last stage of my life here? We're looking at this and we're going, okay, well, I want to be comfortable in a custom built house that I had for myself and enjoy my retirement.
Yes, and I should have the right to do that for the amount of work that I've done my whole life. I've been working since I've been 18 years old.
Yeah.
Right? Every year.
Yeah.
Year in, year out. And I should have the opportunity to be able to come buy a reasonably priced piece of land and put a house up where I want to.
Yeah.
Right? I shouldn't say, oh, well, we got a hunk of land over in Nelson somewhere. Oh, I don't want to live in Nelson. I want to live here.
Yeah.
Right? I should be able to buy a piece of land.
Well, and it's just crazy when you you've hopped in a plane recently and flown over the valley. Look at it's the same thing as Canada as a whole. Canada is like pressed up against the border.
Pretty much, except for Edmonton. Pretty much, you're everything else is like
right along the border.
Yep.
Same with the Okanagan as that. We're all stuffed down into the basin. A lot of the development is on the lake. I mean, 100% of it almost.
Yes.
Right, and you look up in these hills. You're like,
there's nothing.
What's going on up there?
Yeah, I don't.
There's land everywhere.
That's what I don't understand. People are willing to drive 10 minutes to get to the valley. I mean, we're 10 minutes up the road here, but there's nothing available.
No, and people will say, well, that's just because there's no water. And then you get somebody on like John Fennell.
It says that's not the case.
Says, well, the water that you see represents about 3% of the water that is available. The water that you see.
Yeah.
The water in a lake, the water in a creek, all of the water, just like an iceberg, is in the ground. It's under the surface, right? And but then you get these boards that, oh, well, no, we can't. No, we need a watershed protection area. Oh, this whole area. No, you can't develop any of that anymore. And you think like, okay, well, if we were to just come here, let's say we take that thinking and we move it back in time 120 years. none of this would have been developed then,
Yeah,
if that's the case.
Yeah,
Do you know what I'm saying? If you apply that same rationale,
yeah, there's a cactus here. We can't do anything here.
we can't do anything here. And you're like, what? That's not sustainable. You're going to send the signal to the trades that you are already suffering a deficit from, that they're not welcome here. You're going to send the same message to the developers, which, if there are no trades and no developers, there's no architects, right?
Yep.
And then you think about, well, that's a pretty big sector of the economy. In fact, in British Columbia, it represents about 33% of our economy. By the time you factor in new construction, real estate, maintenance,
Yep.
that's 33% of our economy.
And in the building materials to actually do the work.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right. So you think do you think that you're going to be able to say no to that demographic of the population and not suffer some major economic consequences?
I just, it flabbergasts me that this is not like Europe, where pretty much 90% of the land in Europe is basically privately owned, because it's been there for, whatever, 4,000 years of history, and it's been privately owned for that amount of time, right? And there's very, very little government land over there. But when you come to Canada, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'm going to guess at least 90% of the land in Canada is Crown land,
Yeah.
right? Why should it be a hassle to get a piece of property to build a house? But it makes no sense to me whatsoever.
I don't know if I can clearly see the argument against what you're proposing. Like, what would be the detriment of what you're proposing?
Nothing. It's.
I don't know if there is one.
Human nature is to be able to expand, to build, to live comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that being punished here? I don't understand.
It seems so controversial, doesn't it?
It doesn't make sense to me, and I just shake my head, because even in the United States, the bureaucracy, which there's a lot of down there as well, but the bureaucracy to be able to develop land is not like it is here.
I wonder.
A lot of the land is also privately owned, right?
Okay.
So it makes it that much easier for people to decide, okay, I'm going to sell my farm, and if somebody wants to come in and subdivide it and make a bunch of houses,
Yeah.
there's very little resistance to that.
Is it because that it improves the tax base, creates jobs, and also creates a place for people to live? Is that why there's no?
Pretty much. So
What a concept.
yeah, and it's just, United States also has a cost problem on real estate. I mean, there's a lot of places that are completely out of control there, right?
What was the market like where you left?
It was pretty aggressive, but I mean, I sold a house there for 400,000, and it was on a half an acre, 2,600 square feet, 2,800 square foot home, right? On a half an acre, and basically it was worth 400,000.
Okay, so 400,000 divided by, let's just do the square footage of the house. It's $142 a square foot.
Yeah, that was about the going rate. Yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
what did a lot cost down there?
Oh, a lot.
What could you buy a lot for?
A lot ready to go with plumbing and pavement to it, like plumbing and services applied and pavement.
Mm-hmm.
200,000 for
200 grand?
200 grand. Yeah. Like, or yeah, somewhere roughly in there. Yep.
So then we're going to go $200,000 divided by 2,800 is $71 a square foot for the house
Yeah.
to build.
Yep.
Yep. $71.
Yep. Yep.
Let's take a look at some of the listings around Summerland.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just it's way beyond that.
Okay, so let's just apply that same principle to that one property that you and I were talking about. It was 650 or something like 649. That
Oh, the one we were talking
the
about.
one
the
on
other day.
Canyon View.
Yeah.
So let's just say it's 649, and we're going to take out that same 200,000.
Yep.
Let's just keep it across the board. We're going to take out that same $200,000.
Yeah, for the lot. Yeah.
For the lot, 200,000. We're at 449.
Yep.
The house was 1,000 square feet.
Yep. Yeah.
The house was 1,000. So we're going to divide that by 1,000. And our cost per square foot for that building is $450 a square foot.
For a house that was built in the 30s, you have no idea what's in the, you have
No insulation,
idea,
no vapor barrier.
Yeah.
Built out of particle board potentially, like on,
And yet you can get for less than $100,000 of construction cost per square foot, right? You can get a brand new house that has all of the right building materials, all the same stuff, right? It doesn't make sense.
So that's 6.5 times the cost per square foot. And you're saying that the market that you were in was a heavy market.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
You sold that house in how many days?
Oh, 1 day. Sold it in 1 day.
So you're in a bull market.
Yep.
The real estate prices are 6.5 times greater than they are here for a fucking teardown in this community.
Yeah, and you think about it, and you when you look at it, this is cheap compared to the Lower Mainland. That's why I say, like, the government has allowed housing to become so ridiculously priced, right? Shame on them. I say shame on both the provincial and the federal government for allowing the explosion of real estate cost here.
Yeah.
It is way beyond the average Canadian's ability to be able to do it, right? And they continue to keep that price high by limiting development.
Yes, that's right. But Paul, do you
It's really
not
sad.
think that it is a function of the fact that we have been shipping our manufacturing jobs off, that real estate needs to stay high? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like if we don't have other industries that are supplementing our communities, we have to very heavily rely on the value of real estate in order to make up that windfall.
Yeah, that should not be part of the equation.
Right.
Housing, residential is a necessity to be able to allow people to live comfortably and work.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be their job.
I mean, unless you're a developer builder.
Yeah. No, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
Flipping houses shouldn't be your job.
yes.
You should be adding value in a different format, potentially, than just in the real estate market, is what you're
Yeah, I
proposing.
mean, it like housing should be treated as something that you need. Every human that wants to live in a first world country should have the right to have, right? Because, like you say, we are a G7 nation, right? Okay. The people in this country should not have a situation where they cannot afford a mortgage. That is not right. That is a fundamental issue here, is that the government has allowed residential cost to go completely beyond what the average Canadian can pay.
I saw a very interesting graph that CUP.
And I know some people probably that are going to watch this video are going like, well, why don't you just move back to the United States? No,
Move back to the States then.
I'm a Canadian citizen. I have a right to live here,
Yeah.
right? This is where my family is. This is where I want to live.
Mortgage by income. This is an incredible graph. Spirelli CPA, based out of Edmonton, Alberta. The average Canadian house, I think, in British Columbia, I think it's up to like $900,000?
For the average house?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Like when they do the aggregate values of Lower Mainland contrasted with interior and all that, I think they end up coming up with a number that is, what is it?
Average price, 900.
The average price in British Columbia this year, from December to December last year, is up 6%. The average house cost in British Columbia is $966,000. All of the provinces are up. They're all in the green for percentage up, even in the face of these rising interest rates and borrowing costs. They're all up.
It just boils down to is that there is a severe shortage of residential housing here, right? In
Yeah.
in Canada, right? We continue to let even more people come in, but where are you going to put them? If you're stifling development, where are you going to put them, right?
Well, that's exactly it. But not only that, but like, okay, so the thing that I was driving at there was like, if the average house cost in British Columbia is $966,000, the qualifying the qualifying income in order to get into a house like that, you would need to make over $250,000 a year by the time you incorporated
For the household.
for the household.
Oh,
$250,000 a year.
that's not going to happen for somebody that's in their 20s and that have just come out of university.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
So let's cut it in half. Let's cut it in half. Let's say that the average house in the province was $436.
Yeah.
$436,000. You'd have to make $100,000 a year.
That's realistic.
That's realistic, right?
For
Because
two people, for a young couple coming out of university, they both have a career.
Yeah.
$100,000 seems very, very realistic.
and you know why that is? Because in a healthy economy, in an economy that isn't stressed and taxed like this, house prices reflect 3 to 4 times the annual household earnings. That's why that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it can't be 8 times,
No.
right? Like the cost analysis that we just did of that little house down there. That can't be. That doesn't work.
No.
That doesn't work for people.
No. It's really clear, right? I mean, even me coming here, I'm struggling to find what I want, what I think is a fair price to pay.
Having worked your entire life, being at the top of your pay grade in your profession,
Yes.
finding something that's suitable for you, somebody like who has options, let alone somebody that's just getting out of fucking college.
No, I mean, I can afford to pay more, but I don't think I need. I don't think that I should have to.
Yes.
Right? It's a bit of a principle thing for me as well. Right? I've got the money to be able to go higher, but I don't think I should have to. And I think it's almost like a personal protest, right, as to what's happened here, right? But I really, really, really feel sorry for younger people. They are not going to be able to, if things continue the way they are, young couples will not ever have the opportunity to be able to buy a home. And that is really sad in my mind.
And I would say that's the product of what you just said, or I guess what would you say, the factors that led to that product are multiples, because when you think about it, it's like we lied to them. Go into this field. This is going to be really good for your career. I've talked to people that went into IT. They're like, there's no money in it. We tricked them and told them to go into these useless branches of the workforce, promising, oh yeah, you go get a university degree, you're gonna get a good job, and blah 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 blah. And you're like, no, that's not the case.
All they came out is with a lot of debt.
They came out with a lot of debt.
Yep.
Right. And now they're in a place where it's like, okay, well shit. Now what do I need to do? Okay, so I'm 27 years old. I have a completely useless degree. I guess I gotta go be a plumber. Right? So now
you have to start from scratch.
Now you're starting from scratch again, and you're 27 or 30 years old. And you're that much further behind in your home ownership journey.
And that's when your down payment starts accumulating, right? Is when you finally realize I can get a job, or I need to get this job. Yeah, I mean, it's like people are into their 40s before they can even afford the down payment to get a realistic mortgage. Like that is completely ridiculous, and that's not the way a G7 nation should be.
No.
That is not the way it should be.
No.
Right? It's frustrating. I feel really sorry for young Canadians. I really do. Because it's, when I was in my 20s, I was able to buy a, what was it, $54,000 house in Grand Prairie. When I was living up in Grand Prairie,
How much were you getting paid a year?
back then, probably 40,000, 50,000 maybe.
What an
something like-
amazing ratio that was.
Yeah.
A 1.2 to 1 value.
Yeah, and it was no problem. The mortgage payment was very comfortable. It was a big enough house, I mean, it was, it wasn't a great house, but I mean, it was a good starter home.
Yeah.
And it was realistically priced. I mean, it wasn't difficult to be able to pay a mortgage.
No.
I mean, mortgage payment was way less than $1,000, right?
That's,
I mean,
that's the other thing. That's the other thing to get into. You just said the mortgage payment was way less than $1,000. You were at let's just call it a 1-to-1 house value to retain or to annual household income, right? So at a 4-to-1, which is not where we're at, it's a $2,500 a month mortgage payment, right?
oh man, that's
$2,500 a month mortgage payment. Okay, so let's just say that you're into a house and you're running up against the limits, right? You're in an $800,000 house, $872,000 house.
Yep.
You have to make $200,000 a year.
Between the two of you, or
between two
one of
people,
you, depending if you're married or not. Yeah.
Based off of today's lending rates, $5,000 mortgage payment.
Oh my goodness. Well, with a realistic down payment, or a
With a
minimum
20% down payment.
20%. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and of course that now becomes a 60-year note.
Oh, yeah.
That becomes a multi-generational mortgage.
You have a
right?
European mortgage now. You have
never-
a British mortgage. You have a 100-year amortized mortgage.
Yeah, basically a never-ending mortgage that you have to that if your kids decide to continue living in that house when you die, right, they're going to have to pick up the mortgage payments.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. That's the only winner there I can see are the government and the banks.
That's right.
It's not the homeowner.
No, that's right.
So yeah, interesting.
Well, we covered a lot of
Stuff.
Paul.
In summary, I say that there's some struggles that humans are going to have to go through in the next little while, but there's some financial and some environmental things that need to be recognized, but we cannot stifle ourselves or regulate ourselves into suffocation economically. We've got to be able to have a balance between quality of life, quality of economics,
Yes.
right? Everybody should have the right to have a really good quality of life in a G7 country like Canada, right? And what I see is a degradation of that over time. Just what we just talked about, young people not being able to buy a house. That is so critical to have a peace of mind and quality of life, that you don't have to raise your children in an apartment building,
Yeah.
right? That somebody else owns. That it just doesn't click in my head anymore. Like, it shouldn't be that way in a G7.
Especially when we have such an incredible amount of land,
Yes.
as you've pointed out.
Land and
It's
resources.
not like we're in Luxembourg.
Yes, where you're strapped in and the whole country is privately owned, right? There's very little government land there, right? You can understand it. I mean, the density, the population density is really, really high in Europe, right? And yet there's still lots of elbow room there. If you ever go there, there just seems to be a lot of elbow room, lots of forest and lots of elbow room, but most of it's privately owned. But getting back to the summary, it's not all doom and gloom.
No, it isn't.
I think with the right approach and the rethinking of our society to be able to work together and start rationalizing what it's going to take as a balance, economy, quality of life, being able to afford housing, being able to afford recreation, which is another very important thing, is that people have to be able to enjoy their life, right?
Yes.
Keep the economy perpetually moving forward, developing new technologies, right? And don't allow your society to become stagnant and stifle,
Yes.
and punishing people that want to work hard. That's another thing that I see here is that the more money you make, the more the government wants to penalize you in taxes, right? Okay. Now, I can understand everybody needs to pay their fair share, but it's not on a linear scale.
No,
It starts to hook up really fast.
goes parabolic pretty quickly.
Yeah, it goes parabolic really quickly, which people will just say, okay, so maybe I don't really want to make that much money because if I stay at this kind of sweet spot,
Yes.
I'm at a balance between
That's right.
not having to work hard, not having to have any initiative, and I can just kind of sit in this sweet spot and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
It's a socialist dream,
It's-
what you've just described. Oh, we'll just get them in that little sweet pocket where, no, we have disincentivized incentivification.
Yes.
Being incentivized. We've disincentivized that.
No, it's a punishment.
People
You want to make
being
money.
industrial.
You want to make money, you're going to be punished.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's the wrong signal to send to a young demographic in a country. I mean, this is the thing that I've talked about previously when we're doing these interviews. It's like, what do people think we do with the little profit we get out of our businesses? We put it back into the business. Or we put it back into real estate. And what do we do when we develop real estate? We hire engineers and surveyors and electricians and plumbers. And we put the money back into the community.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And sure, yeah, we own the asset on the back end of it, but isn't that the reward for taking such huge amounts of risks in our life and,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and sleepless nights and not spending as much time with our family as we should?
You don't get rewarded. You get punished. You get stifled.
You get punished. And where did we see a clearer example of that than when we were going for our rezoning application this year for that piece of property next door?
That was a joke.
And you have one of these elected officials saying, well, the first subdivision that you did was for your family. The second one was just for money. It was just about money. And you're like, what do you think we're doing here?
Yeah, I mean, they're making money.
Do when you go to work, is it just for money? When your husband goes to work, does he make money? What do you think we're doing here?
Yeah, no, but they think, well, that's above and beyond money, right? That in their
Too
mind.
much money.
Yeah, in their minds,
Too much money.
it's greed, right?
Right.
Nothing wrong with greed.
Well, if it is greed, is there something wrong with it? That's the question. If it is greed, is there something wrong with it? If it's somebody being productive and adding value where there was none before, what is that? That's called building a community. That's called supporting industry. That's called solving problems.
Yeah, I was flabbergasted in some of those. I've only been to one of those meetings. You've been to several of them. And I was just like flabbergasted. This is like, these are the people making the decisions here?
Yeah.
Like I was...
People that have never had a real job before or like a small job, no people of industry on these boards of directors.
I would say unqualified people making decisions that just don't make sense.
Are way over their ability to comprehend and way above their pay grade.
Right. But these are the people, basically making policy. And it's like, really?
Policy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Retired orchardists.
so
Anyway.
yeah.
Paul, always great to talk to you. I'm sure that as things progress here in your time in the Valley, that we'll have the opportunity to have more conversations like this as things come up. I'm really interested in your predisposition to the industrial activities of our planet. I think it's awesome. Seldom do we have somebody with your credentials in our communities. So it's nice. It's nice to be able to talk to you about this stuff.
Well, you got to get it out of me soon because I'm retiring at the end of the year.
Awesome.
No, I mean, it all fascinates me. All of this technology fascinates me because I understand the challenges and I understand the solutions, right? Yeah. And it's going to be challenge versus what logical sense, right? you can't just jump to zero carbon.
No.
Right. I mean, which seems to be the big push. Well, we just need to get to zero carbon. You're going like, that's unrealistic. It's completely and totally unrealistic. And are people willing not to get on an airplane to fly to Acapulco?
That's right.
Right. So if they're all that serious, right, that means you need to stop driving to go to vacations. You need to stop flying to go to vacations. Right.
Yeah.
But that now becomes a personal thing that they're not willing to give up, right? Because that's important, especially to people that live in northern climes. They want to be able to go and spend 2 weeks down in Mexico or
a little look away.
Yeah, a little look away, whatever you want to count. But I mean, it takes a lot of carbon to get you there. Are you willing to do that?
Yeah, is that what we're talking about now? We're going to scrutinize everybody's calendar year.
Yeah,
how they spend their time. Is that what we're talking about now? No, thanks. I don't
and so it needs to be a balance. Logic has to play a very strong part in our decision making, not emotions, right? Logic and what makes the most sense, right? We just really need to be able to look at things logically to make the right solutions, right? The right decisions and to investigate all solutions, right?
Yeah.
Woohoo to tokamaks. I mean, to me, that is the right technology to move forward with, really, for energy.
Yeah.
That is really, really important. And I also think that we need our curiosity of being able to go to the cosmos needs to be reinvigorated. Okay, because I see that exploration going, like the push to go to Mars. Wow, what a milestone for humans to be able to go in there. Just like when we landed on the moon, how proud the whole world was. It wasn't just the United States, it was the whole world to say that mankind went to the moon. We need to perpetuate that because that's what makes people feel good, is exploration. It's the adventure. Like that. The adventure. That's what humans are all about, is adventure. And I really think that we need to continue to push that. Unfortunately, we don't have the technology to go any further than Mars, okay? But we just need to just keep that human spirit going, right? And not dwell on doom and gloom, but to work through our challenges and keep the human spirit perpetuating into adventure. That's the way I look at it.
Well, that's a great place to end it, Paul. Keep the human spirit perpetuating into adventure.
Yep.
Beautiful. Thanks for your time, man.
All right. That was good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.